to see if we can find some tools from it, because it's supposed to be practical. It's not just interesting ideas, it's meant to be, put into practice. To do what? Well, to help us develop this amazing mind of ours. According to the Buddha's view, we have this phenomenal potential to be less neurotic and more happy and therefore more useful, putting it very simply. So let's just think we're going to listen with that approach to see if there's something useful to cultivate our own amazing potential so we can be of use to this planet, suffering sentient beings. All the way to Buddhahood, okay? Sangye chadang soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gipa sonam ki drola penchir sangye drubpa sho.
Well.
Sangye chadang soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gipa sonam ki drola penchir sangye drubpa sho. Sangye chadang soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi Dagi chonyen gipa sonam ki, drola penchir sangye drubha shog. I see you've got two versions of me on there. One you see my side when I look here, and the one you see directly, or sort of. It's a bit dull. Let me see you better. That's better, yeah. Can you hear me on Zoom? Can you hear me? Okay. You can hear me, yeah?
Okay. Better, yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So the word's common. We use the word in, everybody in the world uses the word mind. But I mean, I think if we look at the Buddhist definition of it, and then compare it with the materialist philosophical view, the neuroscientific view, it's like you're talking about something else completely. You could say that, So we have to find the common ground. So there's various things. So you can say, like I said, you can say that really the mind is Buddha's expertise, which typically is surprising to us because when we think of spiritual, we don't immediately say mind. We say spirit or soul or something, But for the Buddha, he says the mind. So there's several things about the mind as far as Buddha is concerned. Well, first of all, where does this come from? I mean, what's his source, And as the Dalai Lama says, and I always like to quote this, it was these amazing Indians more than 3,000 years ago, who were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. And these genius Indians, they're the ones who, you could say they discovered the mind. I mean, they located the mind and they identified it and they then described it. And then they also saw its astonishing potential. So Buddha came out of that system and went as far as he could go. And then he went further. He would suggest, specifically in relation to his own experiential findings about the nature of self within his own mind, that they hadn't gone far enough in identifying the causes of problems, the causes of suffering, and how to be liberated from them. So now we have what's called Buddhism. But the absolutely central point is the mind, what it is, how to identify it, how to unpack, how to identify what's in there. And the crucial job for being a Buddhist, the central job, it really is described by the word, it's indicated by the word Buddha, the Tibetan equivalent of that Sanskrit word. It's very clear when we hear that. The Sangye, Sang, the first syllable, implies, the etymology of this word is so tasty, it implies and these are very precise words, the utter eradication from one's mind of all neuroses, all the fears, all the dramas, all the ego-based stuff. The Buddha has found from his own direct experience that it's not at the core of our being, therefore can be eradicated, can be removed. So already before we go further, that's shocking. You go to an expert about the mind in our culture called a neuroscientist and you say, would you please give me methods to get rid of all anger, all neuroses, all jealousy, all depression? They'll say, we tried that back in the 1930s by cutting out bits of the brain and it didn't work. Because of course we're talking about the brain. So it's a very weird question, and there's no view like that in neuroscience or in psychology. So already that's kind of radical. And if it's true, we better know exactly what he means by the mind. We're not going to go around cutting out bits of the brain. The second syllable, not only, in other words, not only can we eradicate from the mind all the neuroses, and why would we want to? Because this is, Buddha's identified these as the cause of suffering. But these other ones, not only can we rid our mind of the neuroses and become already this genius, amazing, blissful, radiant, clear, wise, happy being, we can even do more. We can develop to perfection, literally, on the Bodhisattva path, all the other parts of the mind, which as far as the Buddha is concerned are the source of our happiness, compassion, kindness, love, all the others. So these words are simple, and we don't use such simple words in modern psychology. We just don't, you know. But these are the terms used by the Buddhist view. Many more as well. But the bottom line, so the essential point is, if that's the result, we can all achieve that result. If that's the potential of our mind to become a Buddha, rid of all the rubbish and full of all the goodness, if that's the result, then it's clear that already indicates immediately the methodology. And it's clear we therefore better know exactly what he means by the mind. It's very simple. So first point, already shockingly different from the neuroscientific view. It's not physical. It's not the brain. It's not any part. It's not a function of the brain. I mean, I always say it, and without insulting neuroscientists, the best way to put it from the Buddhist perspective is that what goes on in the brain, what goes on in the physical parts of us, are indicators, just indicators of what's in the mind. Because for the Buddha, and this is the point, from his own experiential findings, he has found the mind is not physical. These Indians discovered this, these Hindus before him, when they created this technique for developing single-pointed concentration, samadhi, or, you know, the stages of it, levels of it. Well, the classical one that we know in the world is the development of this single-pointed concentration called, what's called shinne in Tibetan, shamatha in Sanskrit, calm abiding in English. This is a state of mind, but at a subtler level. If you were to see a person who's accomplished that state of mind, they'd look like they were dead, because they've accessed a level of their mind that doesn't, like the grosser level of our mind, it does depend upon the brain, no question. The grosser level of our sensory and the grosser level of our mental consciousness definitely can see indications of it in the brain, and has impacted our mind and is impacted by all the other parts of our physicality. But this subtle level is not dependent upon anything grossly physical. This is the findings of these Hindus, 3,000 years ago. The technique's there. It's still extant. It's still being practiced by people existing now. Buddha took it with him when he diverged in his own direction. So the first point is the mind is not physical. So of course we mightn't like that, and it's not meant to sort of destroy or argue with neuroscience. But in order to look into it, we've got to take it as a hypothesis. It's pretty clear. Buddha could be wrong. Don't just believe him and don't just reject him. First, it's not physical. Second, it's got far more subtle levels than the levels of cognition that we assert in neuroscience and psychology. Much subtler, much more refined, more subtle, and more powerful levels of mind. The third thing about the mind is it's not, and this is a shock, because if you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, like the creator religions, they all assert someone who made you, who gave you this essence called a soul, which is what defines you as you. And if you're a materialist, then your mother and father effectively created you, didn't it? You're a handiwork of someone else. This is the weirdest idea for the Buddha. I mean, he doesn't say it like that. I'm saying it that way. Very dualistic. Someone can give you love and anger and hate and depression and jealousy and low self-esteem and being good at football. So then if it doesn't come from your mother and father, if you can't track your mind back to a creator, and it's not physical, and it clearly can't come from nothing, well, what's its source? Well, it's our own. The Buddha's view is this mind of ours They even have a term, it's a mental continuum. So think of it in terms of moments of, okay, the definition of mind. So it's really important to have the definition of something if you want to talk about something. So you can argue in one way, you can talk about the way we're talking here, in Buddha's view, you can say there are two parts to a definition. So like a cup, for example, is a flat-bottomed clay container. The first part of the definition tells you its characteristics. But the crucial part is the second part, which is what is its job, what does it do, what's its function, what is it, in fact, what's its meaning? It holds my tea. So the mind, the definition of mind is that which is clear, and that doesn't mean clear in the sense of clear thinking, but clear in the sense of being not physical. Another term they use is the word luminous, which sounds very nice, we like that. Luminous or clear, and that's its characteristics, it's not physical. And the second part of the definition, its job, its meaning, its function, is to cognize, or the verb to know, or the verb to be aware. These are broadly synonymous. So these words, even these words are used differently, even among Tibetan Buddhists, so it's hard to get clear about the definitions. It's important to really know how the words are being used. But, the Gelugpas might say one thing and the Nyingmapas say something else. So we've got to be clear what we're meaning. But here these words are used as the verb that is the job of the mind. To cognize, to know, to be aware, to know something. Not in the sense that we say it, I know mathematics. It's the bare bones function to merely cognize something. So then you ask Buddha, well, cognize what? That's a really good question. And this is his thing. So what would he like us to cognize? What is he saying that we can cognize? What is it that we should cognize? What is it that, he has got methods to cognize? He says, that which exists. This is a huge one in Buddhism, that which exists. So why does he say that? Because he says right now, these neuroses in the mind, these voices of ego, which he has found to be adventitious, which he has found that we can rid the mind of, and he would suggest that we need to rid the mind of because they're the cause of suffering, and we don't want suffering. That the key function they have, which is why they are the main cause of suffering, is that they are wrong cognitions, put it that way. They're wrong cognitions, put it that way. So they lead us up garden paths. They make a mess of everything. We're living in la-la land because of these misconceptions, because of these neurotic, because of these wrong cognitions in the mind. It sounds kind of abstract, because I don't think we think that that not being in touch with reality is why we suffer. It's a surprising idea to us. So therefore the job of then becoming familiar with your own mind, knowing it intimately, unpacking and unraveling it, identifying these wrong cognitions, which happen to be the cause of our suffering, is the job of being a Buddhist. That's the job of being a Buddhist. So it's quite intense. And the precision and clarity and depth of analysis that we know we need just to make even a decent cake, not to mention make a computer, is the precision and clarity and depth of analysis that we need to do this job. It's not just hippy-trippy, close your eyes and cross your fingers and get a nice feeling, Way more than that. This is the job of being a Buddhist. So the mind is not physical, not the handiwork of anyone else. So if it's not the handiwork of anyone else, so then let's look at the Buddhist way of presenting where it comes from, because that's the big question we all have. Where did it begin? Where did it start? Where, we want a first moment. Well, the Buddha would say it's a continuity of mental moments. So think of it in this linear sense of being moments of cognition. Well, this moment of cognition, what's its main source? In the most simple, substantial way, it's the previous moment of cognition. And its source was the previous moment of cognition. And its source was the previous moment of cognition. Like links in a chain, Mental continuum is how they talk. So the Buddhist idea would be if you tracked your mind back. So you've got two parts to ourselves. You could argue that the Buddhist view would say there are two types of phenomena in the universe, one way. Physical and not physical. Or more simply, physical and mind. Physical and mind. Things that are minds, mental, consciousnesses. The word consciousness and mind are virtually synonymous. So there are consciousness as individual people, individual minds. The term sentient being in English it's the translation of the Tibetan Sem Chen, and it's literally mind possessor. I think it's a much nicer word. We're all mind possessors. That's delicious. A Sem Chen, a haver of mind. So for the Buddha, there are trillions of mind possessors, trillions of consciousnesses, trillions of mental continuums, trillions of continuities of mental moments, you know. So because the Buddha, one of his main observations about the universe is the law of cause and effect runs the world, basically. It's one of the most evident laws, and we know this in science. It's brilliant, you know, we're geniuses at it. Everything's impermanent. So this mind of ours, if it's this dynamic continuity of mental moments that's impermanent or the product of the law of cause and effect, then this moment of mind being the result of a previous moment, linked to it, millionth of a second, and you can track it back. So we've got the body, track your body back, track your mind back, two separate components, they're inextricably linked. And you get back to the first second of conception, inexorably, you'll end up there. So then the second before that, we know where the egg was, in mummy's body, and we know the sperm was in daddy's body. Well, where was your mind? Well, if it's a continuity of mental moments, it has to be that the first second of conception, which is when your mind joined that egg and sperm, that moment of consciousness has to be tracked back to a previous moment, and so on and so forth. So all the Buddhist view about mind is that not more than a few weeks before that, that mind was in a previous body, and so on and so forth. This is this view of reincarnation, which again comes from these Indians, from their own observation. So this consciousness of ours, so then, okay, we want to find a first moment. Well, what's the first moment? Where did it begin? Well, as you know, the Buddha would say, whatever exists, in the simple sense of being the physical world, a matter, and they still use the model of the four elements like we used to in the Middle Ages. They still use that one, especially in the Vajrayana system. It's completely the way they describe the physical world. And there's this consciousness of ours inextricably linked with our different levels of physicality. So everything in the universe, if it's either physical or mind, then the Buddha's view is that everything, it's within the law of cause and effect. Therefore, by definition, you cannot have a first moment. You cannot. The Catholics, I know the Catholics, I was a Catholic, they have extensive philosophy proving from their perspective that there can be a first moment, capital F, capital C, and of course they call that God, the creator, you know. But from the Buddhist view, it's not viable. If you posit the law of cause and effect, by definition, you cannot have an absolute first moment. You can't have the first Big Bang. As the Dalai Lama said in all his different discussions with the scientists, Big Bang, no problem. Just not the first one, that's all. So this totally blows our mind, because there's a deep instinct in us that there has to be a first moment of everything, the first Big Bang, the first this. When did my suffering begin? When was the first one? It's very impulsive, very deep inside us. And the Buddha would say that it's a question that's a mistaken question. It's coming from a series of the dualistic views we already have in our mind that are the source of our nonsense. It's not easy to see that. But from the Buddhist perspective, there can't be such a thing. So our mind, madly enough, insanely enough, he would suggest, that all minds are beginningless. All matter is beginningless. You don't need a first moment, which is demented as far as we're concerned. But let's just take that as the concept right now, okay? Don't worry too much. So consciousness is not physical. It's not the handiwork of anyone else. That particularly from the whole Buddhist perspective of describing the universe and suffering and happiness and the law of karma, or the law of cause and effect when it comes to lives and sentient beings, the idea that someone can, give you anger, give you being good at music, give you love is a very weird view. The more if you practice being a Buddhist, the more odd that is, Because the key point in Buddhism is your consciousness comes fully programmed into this life with your own tendencies. You bring your mind. This is such a massively different view, isn't it? Your consciousness programmed by your tendencies, because the logic of cause and effect, and that's called the law of karma. When it comes to sentient beings, the law of cause and effect when it comes to oneself, a person. That every millisecond of what we think and do and say, every millisecond of what you have in a garden is necessarily the fruit of past seeds. We know that. Every millisecond of what arises in our own mind and in our life is necessarily the fruit of seeds planted in this mind. This is the analogy Buddha uses, seeds and fruits. So our mind is not physical. Our mind is not the handiwork of someone else. What's in it, we put it there. And so just that, this alone is really the basis of Buddhist practice, because it kind of, this view, if you take it on board, demands ownership of what's in there, rather than this deep instinctive sense of being an innocent victim who didn't ask to get born, and which we say sarcastically, but which we mean totally. And the implication of that is huge, isn't it? It's not my fault. It's not my fault, you know. I'm an innocent victim. Someone else did it to me. That's the energy of the ego, for sure. So this view of karma, if a person takes it on board, you know, the assumption that my mind is mine, then what's in it? You know, I put it there, good or bad, happy or suffering, it's mine. And that's the basis of practice. If I'm the one who put what's there, then I'm the one who can change it. So what Buddha has found, then crucially, which is the point of the job of the mind, is that it's got this potential to be perfect, the potential to be a Buddha. All minds possess Buddha nature, they say. All minds are naturally pure, they say. So I think alone, this is kind of encouraging. I mean, you go to your neuroscientist for advice or your therapist, they don't tell you that. There's no view, I think, that your mind is pure in its nature. That sounds very esoteric. There's no view at all that you can rid utterly your mind or even change radically your mind. I think so often in our world, when there's so much suffering, we have a view, I think, in psychology, and there are many views, that some things you just can't change. You know, they're so embedded. There's nothing about the mind that we can't change, Buddha says. It's totally changeable. There's nothing we put in the mind that we can't remove. So it's kind of encouraging, especially if you read the biographies of the yogis, or you hear them talk about the nature of mind. It's really uplifting and encouraging. You know, kind of gives us some kind of confidence that we can change our mind. So one really helpful way to look at how the mind functions, you study in depth when you study the texts. If they study in the monasteries, and we're studying in the West now. Many people studying these same texts, you know, coming from 1,000, 2,000 years ago. And you learn about the mind. You learn the epistemological model of the mind, which is really mind-blowing, the way mind functions. And remember that we're not talking about the brain. So this is super amazing. And it's all coming from the internal observation of the yogis. You don't get a microscope. You don't look at a brain to know this. It's coming from internal, direct observation. This is something quite unique. My feeling is in the world, neuroscience we like because it's hard. Psychology is kind of wishy-washy and a bit weak. I think it's the lowest on the totem pole of sciences, for sure, because we don't like subjective. But this is the exact opposite for the Buddha. The mind has this amazing potential to know itself intimately and to change it radically, and to be in touch with reality, and therefore to be free of suffering, and therefore to help others. So the epistemological model, and then you've got the psychological model. So the day-to-day work of knowing the contents of your mind, identifying a neurosis from a virtue so you do the job of lessening the neuroses and growing the virtues. That's the job of being that's the psychological model. And we'll go into that in a second. But this first one, just even one aspect of it is very, very helpful. I always mention this, and I find it so helpful. It's very telling. It tells us a lot of how we make a mess of our lives, you know. So one way of dividing the mind in the epistemological model is into two ways of knowing, two ways of cognizing: sensory and mental. So we know we have those. We identify those words. We understand about sensory consciousness. We are very vivid. But this is really crucial from the Buddhist perspective. So sensory consciousness is that part of your mind that is not physical, that works clearly, obviously, in total dependence upon the eyeball, the ear, the bits and pieces all working nicely. It's very clear, you know. But the eye consciousness itself, the ear consciousness itself, these are mind, but they're profoundly limited in their capacity for cognition. But the trouble is we give them enormous power. As Lama Yeshe says, we make the body the boss. We give it enormous power because it's so immediate. The senses, we know it, we see it. It's so immediate, isn't it, in our experiences? Second, we wake up in the morning, we come back to life. We come back to life from the sensory perspective. the tactile, the eye, the ear. You smell the coffee, you hear the sound, you feel, the stubbing of the toe when you hit the bed. It's vivid. The senses are vivid. They're our doorway into the rest of the world, which is other people and things. And in fact, as far as we're concerned, that is the rest of the world. That is life. Life is the object of the five senses. It's huge. So, okay, I will say, well, this is kind of boring. I wouldn't say it, but I could sort of say it. It's not a badly designed cup. I'll say it like that. Well, it's a pretty cup. And I wouldn't say pretty much. It's kind of subtle because it's white. But let's just say I say it's a pretty cup, okay? It sort of goes without saying that you hear me say those words and we all assume that my eyes see a pretty cup. Well, no, they don't. This is the point. Eye consciousness, like the rest of the senses, as I said, is very limited in its capacity for cognition. And it can only cognize two things, shape and colour. Shape and colour. Shape and colour. That's it. So it's logical then, it's obvious, well, what part of my mind is cognizing a pretty cup? Well, that's your mental consciousness. That's the point. That's where the workshop is, as Lama Zopa says. That's where all the millions of thoughts and feelings and emotions and unconscious and subconscious and instinct and intuition, this entire spectrum of our inner being, that's that. And the fact of the matter is, from the Buddhist perspective, there's not a millisecond of anything we've ever seen, heard, tasted, touched, smelt, or thought about since beginningless time, by the way, that isn't stored in our mind. Nothing goes astray. Everything is imprinted in our mind. Everything is imprinted, is kept there as a memory, as an imprint, as a memory, as an imprint. That's kind of intense, which is why we can get clairvoyance. Because you can remember anything. I'm not discussing the brain here. We're not discussing the brain. We're discussing this non-physical mental consciousness. So then what happens, and this is really true, the millisecond my eyes go here, quicker than Google, and I joke, but I'm not joking, quicker than Google, my mental consciousness is accessed, isn't it? And then out of my mouth will come, what a pretty cup. Well, what is that? So this is now getting us to the way the mental consciousness, this is the mental consciousness, how it functions, and this is what we have to learn to know if we want to be a practitioner. This gets us to the contents now, the psychological model. But before we get there, there's two ways mental consciousness can cognize. And the grosser level, which is the level we function at, day-to-day life, and the only level we identify in, I'd say, in neuroscience and psychology, and that's called conceptual. So we have conceptual mental consciousness, which is all the thoughts, the chatting, and they can be very gross or indeed very subtle. And from the Buddhist perspective, this conceptuality goes to incredibly subtle levels. Don't discount it, we need to get there. Very subtle levels. But eventually, once we've discovered the nature of our mind through getting single point of concentration and are really practicing, we can learn to access a non-conceptual level of our consciousness, the subtlest level, which is where we can have direct cognition. It sounds abstract to us because we don't posit such a level of cognition. But that's the level we have to function at. That's the level we have to access eventually to quote-unquote get realizations, quote-unquote remove the delusions from the mind. But effectively we live at the grossest level of our mental consciousness, and there are levels and levels and levels of that, and that includes all our emotions, and that's conceptuality. So how do we spend our lives? From the second we wake up in the morning, our senses, instantaneous experience, and then what happens? Quicker than Google, your mental consciousness takes over, and what does it do? It has opinions about things, doesn't it? So we live in opinions, and that's what concepts are. It can be, there is a cup of coffee. That's a valid cognition. We've all agreed that that's coffee, so it can say that is a cup of coffee. That's a concept, and it's a valid cognition, because we've all agreed by convention that's coffee. We can agree by convention that's a white cup. That's a computer. And that's, you could even argue that's an opinion. But what we get to are the grosser opinions. The opinions based on attachment, the opinions based on anger, the opinions based on love, on kindness, on jealousy, on resentment, on compassion. You look at all those states of mind. Our opinions are filtered through those, So a person who's really practiced, who's patient and kind and loving, and they read the latest news about the war in Iran, that will trigger in them, they'll have a compassionate opinion. They'll have maybe a virtuous opinion. Another person who, will freak out and get angry and have a really vivid, shouting, distorted opinion. So there is some truth in there. There is war in Iran. There is a white cup. There is a computer. But what we do is spend our lives, as Lama Zopa puts it, putting decorations onto everything. And that's the function of all the conceptual states of mind. In particular, and the troublemakers are the so-called negative ones, the so-called mental afflictions, which are, the root one being this primordial sense that everything has an inherent existence, nature, and that's really hard to see. But the main voice of that neurotic state of mind is attachment, which is also tremendously hard to identify. The Buddhist analysis of attachment is so massive, not just, I like chocolate cake. It drives us. It's effectively the main cause of suffering, according to the Four Noble Truths. It's multifaceted. It goes to primordially deep levels in our mind. Its main response when it doesn't, and it's this emotional hunger to always get the nice experiences. So when we wake up in the morning, if attachment's kind of there automatically, and is for all of us, then there's an instant assumption that I must only have nice experiences. I must only have the right temperature, the right coffee, the right smell, the right taste, the right sounds. It's automatic. That attachment is there, hungrily wanting only those things. In fact, it's at the level of assumption that I somehow must get them. And the second you stub your toe, or the husband talks too loud, or the kids don't do what you want, then attachment doesn't get what it wants, and aversion arises, and off we go with our opinions. How dare you this, who this? If you don't like Mr. Trump or somebody, you read the paper, read your iPad, hear the news, whatever, off we go with the opinions, So the tragedy about this is that we think the opinions are objective truth. That's why we all fight. That's a nice coffee. No, it's not. There you go, right there. And this is the tragedy. We don't realise it. When we see, I say there's a pretty cup. That's based on all these different opinions I've developed over this lifetime, not meant to mention the last one, in terms of what I have cultivated to be a view that what I like, what I don't like, that suits me, blah, blah. So I'll say there's a pretty cup. But we don't think it's an opinion. We don't think it's an opinion. We think it's fact. And we can see this is why we suffer. Bad enough. So, it's easier to see a mistake if I say that's a red cup. So it's harder to see a mistake if it's a white cup, and then I say it's a pretty cup. It's hard to see that's an opinion. And you're allowed to have opinions, but as soon as we hear it as an objective fact, that's where the problems start. Because we don't think we're having opinions. We think we're seeing. A person's got lots of anger, a particular political view and a lot of anger, they would never say they have an opinion about Mr. Trump. They'd say it's an objective truth. And it's hard to hear that it's not that. But it's obvious. There are equally the number of people who are just opposite to you who think everything he does is perfect. We know that. So then we have all these conceptions. And that's what we have to learn to sort out. Buddhism is a very clear presentation of how we have these at this conceptual level. There are valid concepts and there's variations, and then there are these not valid ones that are distorted opinions. And even the trouble is, for example, too, if you say, like the latest war in Iran or somewhere, every day there's a new war, there's a later war in Iran, whatever, and you have opinions about it. You might be objectively right. If you wanted to check the things, you might be objectively right about it, and whether, if from a moral perspective, perhaps you might have a really excellent opinion that you could say is in sync with reality. From the perspective of virtue and goodness, you could say that. But then on top of that, you have anger. And then we can't see how the anger distorts it. We can't see how that, as Lama Zopa says, all the delusions, this is the key thing in Buddhist psychology, we have to learn to distinguish, remember, between the neurotic states of mind, because we can rid the mind of them. And why should we? Because they're the cause of suffering, because they misrepresent the world back to us. As Lama Zopa says, all the neurotic states of mind, the deluded states of mind, decorate on top of what is there layers upon layers of characteristics that aren't there. So I might say that's a pretty cup. But let's say my boyfriend gave it to me, and then he leaves me for a younger version. Well, believe me, I won't see a pretty cup any longer, will I? It'll appear ugly to me. It's the same cup as yesterday. He's the same as yesterday. No extra grey hairs or fat, but now I've discovered he's cheating on me. So straight away a new view has come into my mind called anger. So we've got to, so in other words, the key point in Buddhism, we have to distinguish between facts and fiction. The key fact about the virtuous states of mind is they have a function, they're in sync to some degree with dependent arising, with reality, with actual fact, reality, dependent arising. So you have to learn to distinguish between the fact that there's a war in Iran, which is an opinion, but it's a valid opinion. That is a cup, it's an opinion, but it's a valid one. We can identify that as a truth. And a valid cognition is one that's in sync with what's there. So there's a way of working it out exactly. So there is a war in Iran. But get 10 people, you have 10 different views, isn't it? One person full of compassion, one person full of rage, one person full of fear, and they completely pollute their mind and paint, cause, and those different views paint a picture of that one event. We can see this somehow, you know. So you can be correct in your assessment of the war in Iran. You can be correct. Valid cognition. But then what distorts everything is the neurotic emotional, neurotic emotional opinions about it. And that's what messes everything up. So we have to distinguish between the facts, that's a white cup, you know. And it doesn't even mean you can't prefer this nice cup to another cup. But as soon as it becomes fixated, therefore I'm right and you're wrong, that's when the problem is. Because the function of all the neuroses, they're very concrete, very absolute, very black and white, very absolute, they're rooted in ignorance, you know, they're very fixed. We can see that people have got a very narrow mind. There's no space in their mind to ever think that they've got an opinion. Everything they say and see is objective fact. We don't think our mind plays any role at all. We think it is that. He is ugly. So there is a war in Iran. There are bad things happening. This doesn't contradict that. Whereas learning, from the Buddhist perspective, is learning to strip away from our mind the painful, neurotic, they call them afflictions, these painful delusions that distort everything and make us utterly miserable. And then, you know, a nice analogy they use about the mind, Labayeshi says, is they use, the mind's like a mirror. So the condition of the mirror, pretty obviously, determines how things are reflected. So if your mind, it's clear, if your mind's full of anger, the person will look so ugly to you. It's very true, ugly. You can't even bear to think of them. If your mind's more pervaded by kindness and patience, the same person, same event will appear differently. We have to really see this, and when we do, it's a revelation. You're not chucking the baby out of the bathwater and saying the boyfriend didn't do anything wrong to me, it's just my hallucination. No, he did cheat on you, fact. So we've got to distinguish between the facts and then the extra things we decorate on top. This is not moralistic, it's practical. Because the Buddha is telling us that the suffering comes from the distorted views. It's hard to see. It's hard to see distinguishing the facts from the fiction, you know. So in other words, just the simplest example is just, I always use it, when you stub your toe. It does in fact trigger a type of state of mind called unpleasant feeling. You can have unpleasant feelings in the mental consciousness, and you can have unpleasant feelings in the sensory consciousness. Fact. It's a fact. You stubbed your toe, and there is pain, fact. But what we don't see is that then anger arises immediately. You scream, you swear, you know, and I'll say, what's wrong, Robina? You know, you say, what's wrong, Robina? I'll say, I stubbed my toe. You'll say, but that's just the pain. What about the anger? Well, of course I'm angry. I stubbed my toe. So of course there's a war in Iran. Of course I'm angry, we'll say. We don't ever think there's an option. So we think that being a war in Iran is the main cause of me being angry, and that's correct, we'll say. So then we think, well, if you get rid of the anger, you're sort of throwing the baby out of the bathwater, and you're saying, well, it's okay to have a war in Iran. No, you're not saying that. That's extreme. You're adding opinions to things, these distorted ones, that then enable you to not see, then you're not able to see things clearly. I think I've heard about people with pain management. There's ways by changing your viewpoints of things that you can change the experience. We can prove that, you know, and that's what we're saying here. The Buddha's saying that. So we're the beneficiaries of this. It's not some moralistic thing, oh, I shouldn't be angry. And again, if we're going to say shouldn't be angry, we better know what he means by that. We say shouldn't be attached, we better know what Buddha means by that. And that's a problem because we have very different definitions. In other words, with the Buddha's view, in the mental consciousness, in his description of the contents of the mind, you know, you've really got three categories of states of mind. Trillions of thoughts and feelings and emotions, all divided into three categories. It's like surprisingly simple. This is not how we describe in modern psychology at all. You've got the neurotic, I-based, ego-based, fearful, delusional, afflicted, distressing, disturbing, miserable states of mind. The three main ones, we all know about the three poisons, this cute phrase. You don't go to your therapist, oh, I've got the three poisons. He'd laugh at you, you know. He calls them the three poisons. The root one is the most deep, most primordial, most subtle, most hard to identify neurotic state of mind. Rimpa in Tibetan, ignorance. This primordially deep, wrong cognition of how things exist. Finally, it's the most subtle. You can't get anywhere near that one until you've got samadhi, you know. But we can know about it theoretically. When it comes to the self, we can call it ego grasping. This is the driver of all our neuroses, all our misery, all our suffering, and all our causing a mess of everybody else. Its main voice, which is the first of the poisons, its main voice, and this is one we can really focus on, is attachment, to get what that I wants. And it's like, and they're all in the nature of fear. And the third one is aversion or anger. And there's this intimate hierarchical relationship between these three states of mind. There's ego grasping in the first place, an assumption of an I in the first place that's separate from others, concrete, solid, set in stone, deeply assumed, and it's in the nature of fear. And its main voice when it is to get what the attachment, this emotional hunger to get what it wants. Panic-stricken every day, every second. And the millisecond it doesn't, it gives rise to the third one, which is aversion. The most volatile level of aversion is kind of anger, shouting, yelling. It's easy to identify. The milder levels of aversion, which are the response when attachment is thwarted 1,000 times a day, irritation, annoyed, upset, frustrated, anxious, worried, all these variations. And all these neuroses, this is just three, and all the other, they talk about 84,000. And there's one Lama, the young Ling Rinpoche, if you know that Gelugpa Lama, some of you might, he's been here. He said 21,000 of those 84,000 that Buddha has identified as being all the neurotic states of mind are rooted in ego grasping, have the character of ego grasping. 21,000 have the character of attachment. 21,000 have the character of aversion or anger. And the fourth 21,000 have the character of all three. So it's a very coherent kind of picture of the mind. And we're not discussing the brain, and not one of these comes from anyone else, that they're in your mind, you know. So the job is to identify them. That's why we have to have samadhi in the long term to do this job. Super sophisticated. So that's the first lot, the neurotic ones. They're the source of suffering. And they have the main job of being wrong cognitions. They're misconceptions to varying degrees. And that's why they cause us suffering. And that's what's hard to identify. And their key way they miscognize, whatever the word is, things, is that they exaggerate, they distort, they embellish, they decorate on top of what is there characteristics that aren't there. That's their key function. So attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of the object. Aversion exaggerates the ugliness of the object. Ego grasping, or the root delusion marimpa, is much more subtle. It exaggerates the very ontological status itself of whatever that thing is. These are all working together, you know, inside. So we have to become so intimate with this, so we can unpack and unravel our own mind and get rid of the rubbish, mould our mind, as Lama Zopa says, into the shape of a Buddha. So what enables us to do this is because the mind is, in its nature, is pure and clear and not set in stone. Pure and clear meaning that neuroses are not at the core of them. They say they're adventitious. They're not at our very core. They're not who we really are. They say like that, which is incredibly encouraging as a starting point. Instead of the view of ego, which is I'm nothing, no wonder we kill ourselves, you know, because we have such a despairing, hopeless view of who I am. Because why? Because we identify with the neuroses, because they prevail. Their voice is loud in our head, isn't it? And when they're strong, this is why we despair, you know. They paint everything in a bad way. We can't see things at all. We can't see our own virtue. We can't see our own goodness. We can see this, you know. So the second category of states of mind in our mental consciousness are the virtues, the good stuff, the nice stuff, that at a relative level are not misconceptions, are not wrong cognitions, are valid, not in a moralistic sense, but valid insofar as they are rooted in dependent arising. They're rooted in reality. Buddha says things exist in reality as dependent arisings. The neuroses are rooted in non-dependent arising, are rooted in absoluteness, set in stoneness, stuckness. And the virtues, if you like, are who we really are. We can develop them to perfection. This is very encouraging to even have this as a hypothesis. And I'm just talking conventionally here. Forget about emptiness, you know. The third category of states of mind, they call them, generally speaking, usually speaking, one way they talk is there's the negative ones, the positive ones, and the neutral ones. Well, neutral sounds like they're not important. So it's misleading. But the third lot, I like to call them the mechanics of our mind. So they're the states of mind like good memory, concentration. There's one called discrimination, which is working every millisecond, enabling you to distinguish between this and that. Colour, shape, left, right, size, it's always there. So whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need those. They enable you to function. They're neither, in this sense, they're neither non-virtuous or negative, the first category, nor virtuous or positive. So that's why if we want to understand this third lot, that they're neither of those, it's not how we think in modern psychology or neuroscience at all. So we've got to get our head around these ideas, these concepts, you know. So everybody needs concentration. If you're a sniper, okay, what drives you to be a sniper is the karmic tendency to want to kill, let's say. You get the job to kill. Maybe it's also driven by anger. They're the deluded part. Then you've got the mechanical part. If you haven't got good concentration, then you'll be in trouble. You'll kill the wrong person, or you'll go to sleep and forget. If you haven't got good mindfulness, memory, keeping your second by second, remembering what you're doing. So you need all of those to function. So in that sense, they're not virtuous nor non-virtuous, but they're crucial states of mind. But we here, as a practitioner, we're harnessing all of those, training all of those to use them to do this job of discovering the true nature of our own mind. Are we communicating here? Want to ask me some questions now? It's a bit of an overview of the Buddhist view of the mind. Any questions, anybody? Paola in Italy, she's up late. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, yes, midnight for Paola. Maybe 1 o'clock. Anybody got any questions? Questions? Yes, back there. I saw a hand.
We have a microphone. Who has a question?
Can you hear me? No, get the mic. It's good for everybody to hear.
I'll pass it. You can stay there.
Mm-hmm.
So the Buddha lived before science, right? The Buddha lived
Well,
before...
Buddha lived before what we call modern science, but
Modern
they were definitely
science.
scientific back then. If you read some of the stuff from these Indians, they've got these genius, sophisticated views of the physical world. So they've got their own... They didn't speak Greek, that's all, honey. They didn't say the word science.
So before modern science, so
Yeah.
the Buddha didn't get to respond to modern scientific discoveries.
Well, he doesn't
like
need
you
to.
said,
We've
the
got
Dalai
people who are
Lama.
like Buddhas now. They can do it. And that's what the Dalai Lama's been doing for 30, 40 years, just having all those
Right.
best conversations with... Because all the knowledge is there from the Buddha, but people have been practicing it and perfecting it since him, so they're effectively Buddha. So they've been doing all the talking with the scientists. There's been amazing conversations among the thinkers in the West, which is what's particularly good about the Dalai Lama, bringing people together.
Yeah, you mentioned how the Dalai Lama reacted to the idea that the Big Bang was the first Big Bang. The Dalai Lama said it couldn't have been the first Big Bang
Well, just...
because there's not a first of anything.
Yes,
Right?
yeah, well, not a Big Bang, but not the first. That's all he kind of joked, you know. Yeah.
Right. So I started wondering how the Buddha would have responded to this new science of consciousness, right? This has just become
What's the new
a
science of
science.
consciousness? What's the new science of consciousness say? What is it?
Oh, well, the same thing that you said, the way you defined consciousness as awareness. Many of the consciousness
But it's
scientists
rooted
are
on
in the same
being a
place.
function of the brain, isn't it?
Well, they're looking. Well,
Well, that's good. See, but that's what I'm absolutely seeing in the last 30, 40 years since the Dalai Lama. There's so much published as well. I would suggest that the thinkers, the modern thinkers, open now to these incredible thinkers of 3,000 years ago. It's not being arrogant, it's just fact. We've known nothing about them, couldn't care less, because we think we're the ants' pants, don't we? We track ourselves back to the Greeks, but who knows about India? So I think there's so much now published and there's so many conversations and talks, and especially on the nature of mind and what it is, and that's what's marvellous, so much conversation.
Right. So I was just wondering if we are able to find a physical nature of consciousness as we study the brain with our microscopes and other tools, how would the Buddha respond to such a finding?
Oh, very clear that you would not find such a thing. They've already discovered that it's not physical. That's already their position. I mean, at the time at the time of India, there were all these different philosophical viewpoints, including, I don't know what they call themselves, but including one that's very similar to the modern view of physicality, only material. So, but the Buddha's view is very clear about that. Consciousness is not a function of the brain.
Thank you.
I mean, it's just that you start with that hypothesis, and then you've got to put it together, of course, if you want to try and get into it. You've got to look at it, you know. So keep going, asking. So then?
Oh, so my question is, how would the Buddha respond if we did find a physical presence of consciousness?
If you do find a physical component of consciousness, that would say the entirety of the Buddhist view of the universe collapses into a heap of incoherent nonsense. So fine, please keep going.
Oy
No
vey.
worries.
No, I can't go further than that.
Yeah, that's right.
We just collapsed.
So just keep going, keep looking. We have to keep finding out what's true and what's not. Nothing
Good
wrong.
enough.
Perfect. Well, the way you can do it, you can shortcut that and you can get single-pointed concentration and you will access this subtle level of your own mind and discover that it isn't physical. That's the quickest way to do it. Take you a couple of years in the mountains. No sex, no drugs, no mortgages, no cats or dogs or anything else. Pretty intense work. But it's there. All the techniques are there. Do you understand my point?
I do.
Okay. That's the direct way to do it. Anyone else? But there's some wonderful conversations going on now. I mean, one lot, for example, Buddhism, especially the Vajrayana, in the Vajrayana system, which really, from India, but it only really is extant in the Tibetan tradition. And there's all these very detailed descriptions about mind and the death process and what happens at death and how the mind leaves the body and when it takes a new rebirth. It's all very precisely articulated, you know. And so all these wonderful scientist friends of the Dalai Lama, he jokes about how they have created machines, and because there's all these, there's all these stories about the great yogis who then, when they die, they go through this process, and by the time they stop breathing, from the Buddhist perspective, you're not dead yet. There's no evidence of brain or heart, but the consciousness is still there, and they stay there for days and weeks in meditation, right? That's how they say it. So they've developed these machines to try and see if they can locate with machines some presence of consciousness there. But the Dalai Lama jokes that they don't have enough machines. So when the yogis down the south of India are in meditation and they send the machines up from Dharamsala, then the dude leaves his meditation, so it's too late. And then they send him up to Dharamsala and the dude in meditation up there's left his meditation, so it's too late again. They've got to have more machines. So they're looking into all this with these wonderful conversations, which is the main thing, isn't it? There's masses of stuff published on all of this too. Yes, people.
Thank you for your teaching. My question is the attachment that you were talking about.
Yeah.
The hardest part of attachment is towards family, I find.
Is to what?
Towards family.
Close people, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, to mother, to
That's right.
father, and also to, as we're aging, we're longing for family.
We're what?
Longing for family.
Are we really? Well, you might be. I'm not, honey. I promise that's not one of my longings. But never mind, that's yours. I understand. I know people get married so they can have babies so they can take care. I discovered that. So they take care when they get old. That's horrific. If that's not manipulation, I don't know what it is, God. Anyway, go on. Keep talking.
It's just, especially for Chinese traditional value.
That's right.
Family emotions, family values are at our core.
That's right.
It's beautiful in our tradition.
That's right.
And very important. So I understand from learning that if it's a strong attachment, then you will suffer. But it's just when you watch nature films, all the animals, they also
That's right.
naturally they enjoy being with their families.
Okay, so what's the question?
Question is, how do we deal with this type of
Okay, darling, so the
attachment?
first crucial point is we've got to get clear of our definition of attachment. Because I'm sensing from your discussion that already you're giving attachment, you're adding to attachment love, kindness, close bonds, good bonds. That's not attachment, that's perfectly fine. So we can't chuck the baby out with the bathwater. We have to really look at exactly what attachment means. Attachment is not the way we use it in the West, close family connection. That's not the meaning of attachment. That's called close connection with somebody and loving somebody and having a responsibility to look after them. That's not called attachment. Attachment is and this is hard to hear because we don't describe states of mind in modern psychology so clinically and so absolutely differently. So from the Buddhist point of view, attachment is a neurotic state of mind. What he's referring to, not the attachment you're talking, the one he's referring to, its function, it's multifaceted. Its first energy is dissatisfaction. I do not have enough. I am not enough. So therefore it rises emotional hunger. Therefore you dump it onto things and particularly people. And then and then it becomes manipulation, it becomes controlling, it becomes possessiveness. Now all of those words we know, they're the function of attachment. And if that predominates in any relationship, it's a nightmare. Do you understand? But close connection, love, compassion, kindness, who says no to that? That's virtue. So if you can take so you can see some families or some parents, so some mother, let's say, who's loving, kind, compassionate, and still got, all the traditions, but she's not neurotic, she's not grasping, she's not possessive, she allows her children to do what they want to do. You know what I'm saying. So you see some mothers, just for example, mothers, who suffer because they manipulate and they're miserable, and you don't love me, you never see me enough, that kind of thing. That's because of attachment and dissatisfaction and self-pity. That's what I'm talking about. Can you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
So don't
Thank
chuck
you
the
so
baby
much.
out with the bathwater, darling.
Thank you so much.
Stick close to your family. But on the other hand, there can be a lot of fear. I remember one Indian woman, and similarly, Indian tradition, Indian culture, still very strong, was in India, in Mumbai. She came to see me, and she was like 27 or 28, and she lived with her family. That's what you do. And she was discussing the problem she had about some decisions about her her job, you know. And I suggested that she should leave home. I said something about another job somewhere, that she should leave her family. And it was like suggesting that she kill her mother. It was so shocking she couldn't even think of it as a possibility, because you just can't do that. So when you've got a lot of fear around cultural expectations, that's attachment. Sometimes you've got to make tough choices. But sometimes when you can't even, because we're so, I mean, this is where, okay, this indicates especially one of the deepest attachments we have, neurotic states, is the craving to be seen as a good girl, thinking it's virtue. It can be virtue, which means it won't cause you suffering, but it was this fear of being naughty, fear of doing what mummy says I shouldn't do because you're terrified mummy will be upset with you. That's a nightmare. That's attachment, and it's not so easy to distinguish. Are you understanding me? Some people live in fear of all this, and this can't be virtuous. When virtuous states of mind predominate, there's not suffering. You have courage, you're authentic, you're clear, you're not fearful. Do you understand me? All the neuroses, attachment, anger, have so much fear, and they're distorted. Do you understand me? This is not easy to, I mean, we know these words, but to really see it inside demands a lot of inner work, you know. So we need to have a meditation every day. Do you understand me?
We have a question online from Margie.
Hello, Margie, darling. Talk to me.
Margie, please unmute yourself.
Hi.
Yeah, unmute.
I'm sorry. I don't really think I even know exactly how to think. I love what you're saying, and I took a lot of notes. But if I look specifically at the war in Iran, there is, how do I hold it? There is a war, and how do we assess it?
Compassion, Margie.
Right,
if you
right.
can't, listen, the first thing is, you see a problem, the first thing is, as Martin Luther King said, he says it's good to be angry, it's good to find fault. My God, look at that war. Then the next step is you say, what can I do to help? Now, we know 90% of the time there's nothing we can do to help, even your next door neighbour.
Right.
So if you can't do anything to help, what choice do you have but to try for your own sanity, to keep clarity, you know, have compassion. If you've got the view of karma, have the view of karma which explains it to you, and then go out and demonstrate if you think that's the thing to do, but not coming from anger and rage and how dare Mr. Trump this, and shout and yell and scream and
Right.
and lose your mind.
And if we can't take, like, if we're not in a position to invite Mr. Trump to maybe stop the war,
Keep going. I mean, the thing is, Margie, also, it all depends on your view. So if you've got a strong understanding of karma,
right.
and most of us don't have, you know, we like it at a fairly superficial level. If we really have the view of karma and are really using it to practice in our daily lives, we will know that, you know, there's these groups of people have this strong connection, and they're playing out each other's garbage, you know. And it doesn't mean you sit back there complacent. But you don't see, there's no such thing as an innocent victim if you think of the karmic one from the big picture point of view.
Yeah.
But then you understand why it's happening, and then you know the intensity of that karma between them is why it's happening. It's a direct arising. If that can inform your view of it, already that calms your mind down. You know, but we just like to have a one-sided view. We love to find the wicked, evil, naughty monster and the nice, sweet, innocent victims. We love that view. And it's a bit naive. It's a bit simplistic.
And yet, if you're bombing
go on, keep going.
If you're bombing a school, or even if you're bombing an oil ship, and you're depriving people of resources they need, and you kill the people.
All this is true. It's true. It's all true.
Yeah.
Facts.
Those are facts.
They're facts. Then.
And that would be a reason, if I were in Congress, I could say, stop it because you're killing people. But yeah,
okay, again, come right down to the basics. What's the point of the question? Try to get it down. What's your question, Margie? What's the question? Really look at it carefully.
I'm looking at how to hold the people that are leading this war and not make emotional judgments about them. I mean,
Okay.
or should
Okay,
I?
First
And
question. Let me ask you a first question. First question. I'm only asking you this because I know you've got a Buddhist practice. So my first question is, do you want to stay sane in daily life? Do you want to keep your mind
Yes.
steady and clear and not lose
and
the plot?
peaceful as possible.
Like the bloody Dalai Lama. Have you noticed the bloody Dalai Lama, Margie?
Yes,
Excuse me, being
yes,
rude.
yes, ma'am.
For 60, 70 damn years, he's still a happy guy. Have you
And
noticed it, Margie?
Yes, oh yes.
Have
And
you noticed? Well, how
Yes.
about taking it out of his playbook and just follow his style? There's your bloody answer, Margie. I don't know
Okay.
why you're asking me. You know the answer.
You're right. I got it.
You got my point.
I do.
But
I do.
basically, you're coming from anger and how dare and fuck Mr. Trump and fuck these people, and I'm supposed to sit there being peaceful?
Right. And he
You've got
obviously
to find
has,
a way. It's possible, Margie, to realise, as Lord Buddha tells us
Yes.
in the Four Noble Truths, you suffer not because of the war in Iran, you suffer because you have attachment and anger and jealousy and resentment and low self-esteem and the rest.
Yes, I got it. I really got
That's
it.
it, baby.
Got it. Thank you very
Like
much.
war in Iran is nothing new. Why are we always so surprised?
It's so true.
Stop being
Thank you.
cynical.
Yeah.
It's fact, you know.
Yes.
To do what we can. But then this is why you've got to have an analysis. You've got to have an analysis. You don't have to. But if you're a Buddhist, you have the analysis of karma, which informs your ability to deal with it.
Yes.
That's the point. It's not just some theory in your head. It informs your emotional response to things. It's meant to be not just theory, not just some kind of heavy-duty theory.
Right.
You
Right.
understand me?
Yes. Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you. That's a very good reminder.
I mean, some people are, look at Martin Luther King. Okay, when I was an old radical lefty in the 60s, I thought he was a weak wimp. I preferred Malcolm X, you know, running around shouting and screaming. But in the end, they turned out to be the same. Because Martin Luther King, he never stopped. Look what he did. Look what he did, Margie. He wouldn't rant and rave and he was always, what can I do to help? That's what compassion is, Margie.
Yes.
So he used all his energy to turn it into action, which is so courageous. So if you want to do action, get out there and start joining the demonstrations.
Yes.
Turn this into something that's useful if you think it's productive. But don't hold your breath that it'll bring any change.
That would be
You do what
attachment.
you can. You know, you do what
Yes.
you can.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
God, swearing about the Dalai Lama. The bloody Dalai Lama.
But I really appreciate your speaking strongly because it's something that feels very
I
much.
understand, Margie. Yes, we're old friends from like 30 years. Used to live on West 23rd, wasn't it?
24th Street.
The 21st. I stay with her often.
Thank
Now you
you.
come and stay with me in the West Village now.
Yeah, I'd like to.
She lives in boring old Florida. Can you imagine?
I'd rather be with you now.
Okay, darling. Any questions? Yes, sweetheart.
Can you speak about what compassion, can you hear okay?
What compassion is?
Wait, yeah, when there is no action possible. For example,
Oh, yeah.
wait.
Yeah,
A Rinpoche might say, have compassion for your oppressor. And have compassion, or Lama Zopa always, compassion. And intellectually, perhaps I know what it is. But can you speak somatically, or is it a tone? Like, I just can't, at the moment, in New York, grasp compassion.
Okay. Listen, the fundamental point about compassion in Buddhism is rooted in understanding the Four Noble Truths, which is the first step in Buddhism, the very first step. Entry level for me into Buddhism is 1, there is suffering. 2, he's found the causes. 3, there are methods to get rid of the causes. And 4, the method. That's it. So 1, there is suffering. There's 3 levels of suffering. So the first kind of suffering is called the suffering of suffering. And that's the only that's the only place we have compassion. So you've got all the naughty, mean Mr. Trumps and then the poor innocent victims. And that's the compassion, the only compassion we have in the world. And that's Margie's problem as well. We only like to have compassion for the innocent victims. We love to point out the children and the animals. You know? We like to have compassion for innocent victims. So, do you understand me? They're the only ones we have compassion for. The only ones. And if we discover that that child is a naughty child, we maybe won't have compassion anymore. But we want to have innocent victims and naughty monsters. Completely dualistic view. So then the second level of suffering is the suffering of the mind, the delusions. Put it that way, really, having delusions. So when we understand, and then the view of karma is that everything we think and do and say produces the person we become. This is the fundamental law of the universe in Buddhism, that everything any being thinks and does and says produces the person they become, produces their future experiences. So therefore, everything we think and everything we experience now is the fruit of our past karma. So we are our own creators. This is an intensely difficult view in the world because we would rather have innocent fucking victims. Please forgive me. When you have that view and you try to practice it, then your view of the world is completely different. So every day you see the innocent victims, you have compassion for them because you know they caused that themselves, but you have even more compassion for the mothers who hurt them because they are just beginning future suffering for themselves. That's the basis of real compassion. And if you don't have that for yourself first, when you see your own suffering, you know that you caused it. So now you know you can change it. That's like compassion for yourself. That's the very first one. That's the basis of compassion for every human being, every animal, every dog, every Mr. Trump, every pedophile, every whoever.
So there's not a way of entering compassion non-intellectually.
I beg your pardon?
I just want to be in the feeling of compassion without having to go through those steps.
Do you want me to swear 49 times? You're saying, I want to learn music, and I'm giving you a bit of musical theory here. Oh, no, I don't want to learn theory. I just want to feel the music. You've got to fucking do the theory first before you can play Bach. You're just being lazy. How the hell can you get feeling before you know what it is? Intellectually, conceptually. You've got to work with what you've got now. Have a concept of what it is. Compassion is empathy with the suffering that others have and that they cause. And you have to first know your own. Then you can see, my God, we're all in the same boat. Thinking we're these innocent victims, schizophrenically thinking the world does it to me. When you begin to have this for yourself, everything is different. And you have compassion for every person, every second. Because they're harming themselves.
There's not a problem then of people having intellectual compassion that doesn't...
I don't know what you mean by intellectual compassion.
That's my problem. As like a head of compassion, but
I beg your pardon?
a bit dissociated
Just a minute,
compassion.
please, wait a minute. What do you mean by intellectual compassion?
Like I understand this poor person is so deluded.
Understand what?
I understand this poor person.
That's not intellectual compassion. That's learning the theories that if you internalize them will become compassion. If you're trying to play music, when you look at the notes on the piano, that gives you joy because you know that's the theory and you want to play it to get the music. The same with the words. It's not intellectual compassion. You know the theory and then you apply it internally. Are we communicating?
Yeah, I have one more question.
You're very welcome.
Do you find your own compassion levels oscillate on a day-to-day basis?
Honey, I'm not a Buddha. I'm not anywhere near a bloody Buddha. I'm a regular person.
So what do you do when they dip?
Dip? What dips?
I'm just in a dip.
What dips? My compassion?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I don't have much compassion, so it doesn't have far to dip. But it's steady where it is, okay? One step at a bloody time. Jesus.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I hope you're not recording this swear. I mean, I've sworn more tonight than I have in the last 5 years, I think.
We have another question online.
Just a minute, wait. Are we communicating, Petal?
Yeah, I love communicating with you. Thank you.
Are we communicating, Margie?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We've got to be a bit courageous. If we say we're a Buddhist, Margie, you've got to go a bit deeper. You've got to really look at karma and really apply it and really internalize it. And everything changes when you do that. I
Yes.
promise.
And if I look at the Dalai Lama and look at what's happened in Tibet, and I hear he can have a temper, but
That's right.
he doesn't broadcast it. He's compassion incarnate.
He's trying to act like he's a normal guy by saying he gets angry, but he doesn't fool anybody. Come on.
No,
Do you understand?
no, he doesn't.
That's right.
And,
I mean,
and
this stuff-
Robina,
this
I
is-
think it starts with us. Like, I realized, wow, I don't have much compassion for myself. I try to feel it for Mr. Trump,
That's
but
right.
I don't even feel it for myself much.
No, that's exactly right. So it's one step at a time. Thank you, darling. So yes, hello, Leslie.
Leslie, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Oh, hi. Hi, Robina. Thank you. I think you have just answered my question, but let me run by what I'm understanding, and it comes directly from what Margie was just saying. So
Yeah.
I was thinking about, as a side effect of the Iran war on a very personal level, if, say, gasoline and oil and all that expenses on everything goes up, it's harder for me to function with the amount of money that I currently have. My first step is compassion for myself rather than being angry that that's happening. Yes? Have compassion for myself that I have to function differently and feel constrained.
I'm a little bit confused. Say it differently, and Leslie, I'm not quite sure what you're saying.
Let's say I have to commute by car and gasoline goes way up in cost because of the war.
Yeah.
And it's a real strain for me. Instead of coming from victim place, they're having that war and I have to pay more, and why me? I'm not in that place. I'm trying to say, I have compassion for me that this is hard for me. Is that my
I
first
think at least
step?
that if you have that one, because you can't fix it. It's
Right.
all wrong. I agree, it's wrong. You can't fix it. So this is okay. This is a good point. This is the point, Leslie. The very first step is, even if we don't know why the bad thing's happening, even if we have no explanation, even if it is blatantly wrong, even if it is really terrible, we've got to simply look at two things. Look at your mind when you're angry, resentful, fearful, jealous. Look at the pain it causes. And then look at your mind when you're trying to be patient. I mean, we've got to practice it, and clear and accepting and do our best. Then which would you prefer? Which feeling would you prefer? That's the bottom line.
Yes, of course.
In other words, we are the benefit. What we've got to see, and this is about compassion, what we've got to see is the very first step of practice in the Four Noble Truths is to recognize the pain that my attachment and my anger and my jealousy and my depression and my fears cause me. It's so simple. It's so ordinary to observe my own mind and see the pain that they cause me.
Right.
Then I can start to have compassion for others first. But we don't even have that one. We don't. We just curse and swear, and we don't even notice that cursing and swearing and anger and low self-esteem is breaking my heart. So until I can see my own mind, my own neuroses and my own delusions, forget the bigger picture of karma, I won't understand myself, and until I see that causes me pain, I can't possibly change, and therefore I can't have compassion for anybody else. It's not possible. So we have to see our own mind really clear and identify anger, identify jealousy, identify anxiety, identify fear, whether they've, but we sort of have this view that I'm allowed to be anxious, I'm allowed to be angry because look at what they're doing to me. But there's no benefit. We have to see practically the benefit to oneself of changing one's own mind. That's the first.
Thank you. That's so much clearer. Much clearer. Thank you.
It's practical. It's a practical issue. Even if you have even you're living in, can you imagine you're living in Iran and these people and your children just been slaughtered at the house and whatever it is, or now you're all getting the benefit now without petrol and everything, gas, whatever. But whether you have an answer or not, that's the point. This is why I always use that example. I always use this example of my friend in prison, Sunny. She died now. She was in for 17 years on death row in Florida, innocent. Husband was murdered. He was executed. His brains burst into flames. She's lost her children. She was accused of killing 2 policemen. This is a classic, a perfect example, a most perfect example. And I'm sure Margie's heard it 27 times, but she hasn't joined the dots. There she is, innocent. She had no particular religion. She was a hippie in the 70s, got hitching in Florida, got picked up by 2 guys. The guys got stopped by the police. The guys killed the police and blamed the hippies. So she and her husband were on death row. He got executed. She lost her kids, lost her family. She's in a cell 24 hours a day. For 12, 13 years she was on death row. Then another 5 years before they let her out. She was innocent. Can you imagine the nightmare? She had no explanation for it. There was no justice in it. She was completely innocent, but she was sitting there in a cell with a bloody Bible, and that was it, and that was her life. So I can't even conceive of anything like that. Like a nightmare. Utterly, insanely, dementedly wrong. And she said, finally, I realized I couldn't change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. So I decided, she said it like this, she's not a Buddhist, I decided I'm not a monk, I'm not a prisoner, I'm a monk. I'm not in a cell, I'm in a cave. So basically, she saw the white cup and she changed her interpretation. That's the point I'm making. The fact was she was in prison. The fact was innocent. The fact was she was blah, blah, blah. These are the facts. She was able to change her interpretation. And who was the beneficiary? She was. So she kept her sanity, she learned yoga, she said, I gave myself permission to scream with rage for 5 minutes, and then I would stop and go back to my work. She's not religious, she had no talk of God, no talk of Buddhism, no talk of karma. She was just this super emotionally intelligent person, that's the only way I can say it, who realized by changing her own mind, changing her interpretations, she kept her sanity and became happy. And the bonus was she kept her sanity, so never stopped working on her freedom and finally got it after 17 years, instead of going completely insane. That's an example of everything I'm talking about here.
Thank you so much.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you understand, Margie?
I do.
If
Thank
we can
you.
change something, change it. If we can't, then, change your mind. That's all Buddha's saying. It's not moralistic, but it's shocking because we love to, we're addicted to anger and attachment, that's all. It's a simple way to put it. We're addicted to anger and attachment, that's it.
You could almost say that our culture is addicted to
Well, and we just
negative emotions.
Well, of course we are. We're totally. We are a manifestation of it, isn't it? Of course we are.
Yeah.
And we all buy into it. So, yeah.
Including war in Iran.
That's exactly right. What time is it? 8 o'clock. Any more questions? Are we communicating? That's a perfect example. That's what Buddha's saying. Forget karma. Forget karma, forget God, forget Buddhism, forget conscious, forget brain. That's the point. That woman, Sunny, she's amazing. I can't get over her. She got out of prison. I met her out of prison. She's a little old lady in a wheelchair. You saw her. She had these 17 years of hell on earth, And I know many people who've been in prison and have so much emotional baggage coming. She was like this little old lady you'd never know. She didn't have trauma. She dealt with everything, that was amazing. She realized that she could change her mind. That's all I'm saying this entire room, the whole night. That's it. That's what Buddha, and it happens to be what Buddha's saying. He didn't invent it. He was just an expert at it, that's all. There's more to it than that. But what goes on in our mind, as he says, what goes on in our mind is the main source of whether we go crazy or are happy. That's what he's saying. Doesn't mean there's no war, doesn't mean war is wrong. That's not being said at all. But because we believe we have no choice but to be like, we're like puppets, If there's a war, we've got to be angry. If there's this, I've got to stub my toe, I've got to get angry, If it's this way, it shouldn't be this way. You understand my point? Sunny's the best example. She blows my mind, this woman. In a cell, on her own, 10, 12 years. I decided, she said, I couldn't change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. That's it. That's the point. And then you'll be more useful to others as well. That's the point, Then you can be helpful. Then you can have compassion. That'll do, I think. Okay, people? All right? Sorry for all this swearing if it offended you. Saying Jesus and God and bloody Dalai Lama. I said the F word a few times, didn't I? Very naughty. Excuse me.
We don't need to be attached to those words.
Good, okay. Okay, so I'm going to sing a little prayer. Just may compassion grow and grow in the hearts of all. That's it. Jangchob semchog rinpoche, ma ke panam ke gyuchig, ke panyam pa me payang, gong ne gong du pavashog. So never give up, people, one step at a time. Discover your own true nature, your own joy, your own happiness, your own bliss. Then you can be of benefit to others. No matter what. No matter what. Okay? Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
people
you.
on Zoom. Goodbye, darlings.
Thank you.
Thank you.